Next, we have the continuation of the public hearing for the Tremont School. And our business tonight is to review the draft conditions.
Which
yes?
I didn't get to. I just have been swamped. So, and there was a new plan submitted this morning. They've switched it around so that one of the issues that came up on the sidewalk is that the ramp had to change locations as a result of this slope here, which we talked about in the sidewalk.
Yep.
So the ramp is now here with an access point here to the existing sidewalk.
Yeah, okay. That's kind of what we thought would happen.
Yeah.
We thought it was going to go over the edge of the hill. Right, but we don't have anything to review.
What I would suggest, I mean, we talked about the fact that it's a temporary building, that it's in accordance with this site plan. The temporary building would only last for 2 years. The site plan, they weren't going to remove any trees.
We have to issue an amendment to our decision.
There's at least 2 decisions on this. So
Yeah.
what we've been doing, what I think has been done in the past is that the board makes a decision and then references the 2 prior decisions and says those don't change except for this amendment.
Yeah. We need a document that we can vote on.
I don't know what to tell you. I put in 12 hours yesterday and I'm putting in 12 hours today.
I'm not blaming you. I know you're busy, but we told these guys. Is the trailer out there now?
Yeah, it took delivery Friday before last.
But you can't use it because you don't have a decision.
That's right. Yeah, so temporarily, you're doubling up on some classroom space right now.
Yeah. When do you think you can have the decision written?
Within the next day or 2.
What we could do is call a special.
Friday morning.
Yeah, call a
No,
meeting.
wait a minute. No, we can't do that. It doesn't give 48-hour notice. Monday?
Well, this is Wednesday.
Right, it's Wednesday night. You have to give 48-hour notice.
Do we need 4 people?
You need 3 people.
3 people. Saturday?
I may not be here, but,
Doesn't matter.
okay.
We've done it without the planner before. As long as we have the document,
Right.
if we have any changes to make, we can document
We can mark
those.
it up.
Mark it up. And approve it as amended. And then you could make the amendments and we could sign it on Monday morning. If you can't make it, I know that people don't want to.
I'm here Friday morning, but
Okay, so it looks like we have enough people to be able to come on Saturday morning. If you could.
Is town hall open?
Probably.
We
It's
have-
just before the primary, people be registering to vote and stuff. They're voting by.
You'd have to notify Donna that we need to
Okay.
need to use the selectmen's conference room for 30 minutes on Saturday morning.
Okay.
What time?
9 o'clock.
Good.
Is that okay?
Okay, I'll post it.
Sorry.
Well, we're a volunteer board. I appreciate your going beyond the call.
I'll say they are.
The only other question, and I don't know if there's any way around it, is I can talk to the building department. Is there any way they can run their electric line not connected until I'll check with not.
They can do it at their own risk.
Yeah, that actually happened on Rivers School. They started to do the work with River.
Right.
And they just did it at risk.
The chances
They'll
that
take
we're
the risk.
going to say no to that are exactly zero.
And the other thing they did, the four things you folks asked for last time, they've shown the bushes, they showed the fence, all that's left, posts, they've shown stone dust over here, concrete, because it's handicapped, that's concrete, that's stone dust, and they've reflected that on the plan.
Okay.
So after the 2-year period, what happens?
After the 2 years, they're going to be elsewhere because, actually, we had 3 hearings on this. We started off annually, but anyway, they're increasing, they're following the children through.
Right.
During their first 9th grade class, then 10th, then 11th, then they're out of space. Then they have to be elsewhere.
I guess what I mean to say is this is a temporary classroom or office
Administrative,
for 2 years, and then after 2 years, the trailer goes away.
Trailer goes away.
And the site
They'll
goes back.
go away.
Right.
So can our decision expire in 2 years?
That's what we're going to say.
That's fine.
Yeah.
This is good for 2 years. It either needs an extension, or you agree that everything that you're doing, the trailer, the ramp, everything disappears in 2
Entire
years.
module is gone after
Maybe
2
not.
years.
Turns around.
That everything that you're adding will disappear in 2 years, or come back for an extension.
Okay. And I don't see any reason that once the trailer's gone, the church wants the,
Wants a ramp to nowhere.
I was thinking of the cinder block or.
No, the
All that would get
agreement with
removed.
the churches that we would remove that.
Okay, all right. And one of the good things on the change is they get to save every bush, they're not disturbing one bush. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, I know how valuable Saturday morning are.
Right on time.
Right on time. So 441 Glen Road, are they hanging around out there? Is Dave out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here goes, sir.
by Joel, which is about 3 years ago now, on Chestnut Street. Because he overruled the prior building inspector, Mora, who was saying that if it has any type of variance, anything going forward needs a variance, which I never thought made a whole lot of sense. We just needed a ruling on it, and Joel said no.
I don't know the situation there, and we're not attorneys anyway, so.
Yeah. So I'll contact Betsy to get a copy of the email.
Yeah.
And I'll send, I guess I'll send it to my inquiry to you, Betsy, because I know he needs authorization to respond to me.
Yeah. So what do you want to do?
Well, we're all here. Is the board prepared to listen to what we've done? And if we reach that point, vote?
What if we did this, Mark? I'm just throwing this out here. You know, we can hear the presentation, but maybe not, then continue it until this is resolved, rather than giving you marching orders to do more work. I don't know exactly how to advise you on
I
this.
don't
think we can do more than that.
It sounds like no matter what we do tonight, you're not prepared to vote because
We
until
can't.
the
We
issue
don't know.
gets settled.
That's right.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
But we are all here. I think we might as well.
All right, but just understand, maybe we won't be making a lot of comments tonight. We may have to go through all this again. We probably will when this gets resolved.
So
So
we have the neighbors, everybody's here. So.
Okay. All right, so, good, then we now have about a half an hour. So if you could run through it in 15 minutes, that'd be great.
Sounds good. Eric Swenson from the McDowell Company. So what we have for you today are two options, option A and option B. Option A is something that we have shown you in the past, except pushing it as far into the site as we can. Option B takes into some considerations that you guys have given us, and we'll show you that in a second. So with option A, it's the garage turned to the side here. Yep, side-loaded garage. What we have what you've seen before: front court, a side court. We reduced the side court a little bit, pushed the full property or the full house towards the septic system, changed the septic system so it's a different kind, so we're able to get closer to that area. And then that leaves us from the setback line now 36.2 feet, whereas when we first originally submitted, we were 6 inches. So we've come 36 feet off of our original submission.
You lost the pool, right?
Yes, that's the most important thing. We removed the pool out of both plans, and then in keeping with that, we were able to regrade some of the rear as well as reduce square footage of impervious. And as you see the elevation here, it shows the front of the house with how the garage is situated, as you can see in this layout here. And then we flip over to option B. Now, option B gets rid of the pool. We've gotten rid of the front court and provided a parking court in this area with a pull-off for front door access. And then, as you can see in the elevation, turn the garage doors facing this way. Unfortunately, what this does is it orients the house. It increases the mass, the front of the house, to this neighbor. At that point, so we're now impeding on this neighbor while trying to facilitate this neighbor here. So there's kind of a catch-22 working here. In doing so, we were able to push the house back a little bit further into the site to account for the court here. And we're now only 47 feet from the setback line, so we're 10 feet further from the setback line than the other property. In terms of grading and removal of soils and some of the blasting we have to do in the back, both of these plans are very similar. I think the square footage difference due to the reduced of the court is how much?
It's approximately 500 square feet.
500 square feet, and then there's only about 100 square feet of site removal, correct?
About 100 cubic yards.
100 cubic yards, sorry.
Perfect.
Yep.
In both options?
No, from one to the other.
Option B has slightly
Yeah.
more earthwork involved.
Yeah, this one has slightly more earthwork, slightly less impervious, and then obviously the other plan is the inverse of that.
But it looks like both houses sit in the same elevation, basically.
They do sit at the same elevation, and that is for a number of reasons. One, we have to get up the grade and into the house here, into the garage. And two, in moving this around the site, we would be creating more cut, so we would be removing more material. This sits at a really nice plane on the site where we're taking some material from here and being able to put it into the front at that point.
Isn't this house 1.2 feet higher than?
Because we had to push it back into the site, the ridge line, the full house height is about 1.2 feet higher. Above the
natural
other
grade
option
before construction.
No, I'm sorry, there's two options. A is the side-loaded garage. The average natural grade is 278. And B, which we're looking at now, is the front-loaded garage is 1.2
We had to move
feet
uphill.
higher
Yeah.
as a result of that.
Yep.
So everything's higher by a foot.
Correct. Now, I'm just going to show a section. Well, first I'll show a graphic that we haven't shown before. I just want to let you guys see the scale of the footprint compared to existing houses and some neighboring houses. And these lines that you see surrounding here are from our first submission, the amount of disturbed area that we have given back. And we saved about 30 trees in that area, in those areas. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of wooded area here that will be maintained, as well as additional screening to whichever option that we provide, or that you guys choose from. And then I just want to break into a section here. So this is a section coming through 445 Glen Road, which would be the house in front, which would be a section cutting through this area here. This shows a sight line from the second story of that property through evergreen screening over our proposed screening. All you see is about 8 to 10% of the ridge line, and that is on the thinnest part of the house. Now, unfortunately for the other neighbor, they have to look at the full portion of this house with if we do option B, which is the front-loaded garage.
I'm not quite sure what the difference in impact is on the other neighbor between the two choices.
I can explain that. Well, actually, I'll let Jan explain that one in terms of the certain graphic as well as the.
So, good evening. My name's Jan Gleistein, the house design architect. On the differences between the two plans, I have before you the original proposed house, which we call option A, which is a side-loaded garage. So the main body of the house is the same. And in addition, I just want to point out that apropos comments to follow the contour of the natural grade, which is very slight on this property, very pronounced on other properties, that this end of the house, has the living room wing does step down a foot. So it does step down, but the change in grade is really within 2 feet. So the house does make an adjustment to the grade. That's just a side note. In terms, to answer your question, Chairman, the original design had a side-loaded garage, and the issue was to get the house further away from the neighbor abutting on Glen Road. And along the way, I believe we have found engineering and landscape solutions to push the house, but we have been asked by the board to do a study, which we have done, I'm presenting tonight, of turning the garage to the front with the thought of that we wouldn't need this big courtyard between the garage and septic system. So we've done that study. So the basic, to summarize what my landscape architect colleague Eric Swinson just said, we've now gotten the side-loaded garage, which I repeated scheme A, to be roughly 37 or 36 feet from the setback, with setback lines another 45 feet to the property line. And when we go to the front-loaded garage, taking that same garage design but simply rotating it 90 degrees, we increase the bulk of the massing from, and I'll just push this back. From this, where you see a single gable, and the gable itself is smaller than the impact of the actual 24-foot ridge behind, and what you get is a massive 38-foot roof. So it extends it obviously another 12 feet of the garage bay, but it really dramatically almost doubles the massing impact to the neighbor to the east.
Of course, it's a pitch roof, so it's heading away from them.
That is correct, but we are substantially increasing the massing impact, whereas the impact of the massing to the neighbor on Glen Road is really this small building here, which has been stepped down, which is quite different than telling the next door neighbor, you get all of that. So this is really two dramatically different impacts. And if you go back to the plan of the site relationships, and we examine the dimensional differences between these houses, they're rather large for Weston standards. We're not exactly cheap by jowl here. This neighbor sees a very small footprint, visual footprint, and this section shows that they see only the upper triangle in a chimney. The other neighbor gets the benefit of 100+ feet of facade. So I would submit that in terms of balancing the impact of the neighboring abutters, that the side-loaded garage, which we prefer as the applicant, is a better submission than the front-loaded garage. We did the study as requested. These are our recommendations.
The section shows option A.
Correct, but in option A, it doesn't matter whether it's A and B, because this person will never see the garage
Right, no,
regardless.
but the house, with option B, the house moves an additional 10 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going
It's
to
even less.
further diminish the impact on the neighbor.
But it also raises the ridge.
5 foot.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of raising the ridge, there's something that doesn't seem quite right, because in both options, the finished floor elevation is 280.3 feet. And the difference, that foot difference, is in the higher ridge of the main part of the house, and I don't see why that would even change. It has nothing to do with rotating the garage.
The house footprint would have changed. It would have come up. That was a mistake on one of our parts. So the full house doesn't.
So the civil engineering drawings are wrong, because they both show that the grade around the house is 279 something, that the finished floor grade is 280.3, and the architectural also show finished grade being at 280.3.
And our goal for today was to show you two options. We didn't fully think through both options, just because we didn't want to have to expend two full options in terms of financial costs for the applicant.
They're within a foot.
Yeah.
Our statistics, our sheets whether the civil engineer is right or the landscaper right or the architect is right, is the natural grade in the side loaded garage is 278 and in the front loaded garage is 279.2. Now, I would submit, just for the board's consideration, is that both schemes work as a house. From our perspective, we put all the effort in to make the landscaping, the architecture, and civil engineering work for both. So from our point of view, we would be satisfied with the final decision of the board. We have a fine house. We're trying to respond to your concerns and especially the neighbors' concerns. So we would like it all to work. We would say scheme A is our preferred, but we would be satisfied with scheme B. We are completely at the discretion of the board to instruct us on how to proceed.
Do I understand correctly that you've sort of gone partway with both solutions, but you haven't worked out all the engineering for both, you haven't worked out all the landscaping for both, right? You're just looking for direction, and then you fill in once the direction is determined. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. We're 90% on both schemes, but to go to the very final planning board approval stage, to answer your question, we would be continued anyway to finalize something regardless of the zoning question. So this all parallels.
Okay. So we're not talking about engineering tonight, we're not going into landscape details or any of the rest of it, we're just going into the impacts of one versus the other.
Correct. And to, while, we have this zoning quandary in front of us, we'd love to get the board's kind of flavor of which way to go. We would be satisfied with that.
Okay.
But there is, to summarize, two distinctly different impacts on two different neighbors.
Yeah.
And so that's the quandary of King Solomon, you cut the baby in half, and that doesn't satisfy it anymore.
Are the occupants of the two houses in question here?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, good, so we can get your input. All right. Any questions from the board, comments from the board?
You touched on the pool being limited. Did that mean the house is pushed also
We
where
also
the pool
did
was
that.
supposed to go?
So that allowed us to get a little closer, actually 10 feet closer than we were at the previous meeting. 12 feet, sorry.
And this is still in excess of 1,000 cubic yards of cut, is that right? So we're talking about special permit as well this year.
For earth removal, you need a special permit for the earth removal from the ZBA. Okay.
My question is, am I going to be able to see that ridge when I drive down Glen Road?
I don't think so, due to the distance from the road, and it rises uphill. The standard would be dead of winter.
What?
Dead of winter where there are no leaves.
We just went through a lot of angst and aggravation over the town center here, and this piece of property is backed up, correct? Sort of conservation land reservoir, am I right? And that other little piece to the right-hand side, which was cut off, is officially now conservation land, am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a sensitive area. This isn't a place in Meadowbrook as a development where everything's, this is a sensitive conservation area. And I'm going to see that house, and I don't see anything there now.
I don't think you are going to see it. I mean, we can do a study, but I don't think you will.
Okay, I'm this neighbor, right here,
What's your name?
Marcy Goldsmith. We do not want to see, my husband and I do not want to see that garage on the front facing property. We don't want to see that length. We feel that the plan with the side loaded garage is much more visually appealing. You did a great job trying to balance it out. We think the other plan, we see less of the house. And I can understand the concerns. I mean, quite frankly, we work out of the house. Here's my office, here's my living room, here's my bedroom. I'm going to see this house, and my husband's going to see the house more than anyone driving up and down Glen Road. And we're going to see it 6 months out of the year. So we're fine with the side-loaded garage because it's going to be a beautiful house. I actually would have a problem a little bit, granted I'm new to Weston in terms of what people see from Glen Road, because I do a lot of watching the cars speed up and down Glen Road, and I don't believe in morning traffic or afternoon traffic. Anyone's going slow enough to see the house, or they're on their phones, and they better not be on their phones and seeing the house, because what could happen, but there haven't been many accidents in front of our house, thankfully. Let's see what else. I do a lot of biking and running and walking, and the street goes downhill. If you're going down from 425 down to Wellesley Street, the pavement is very uneven, and you better be watching the road, or else you're going to wind up going over your handlebars and maybe getting hit by a car. And if you're going uphill, if you're a better biker than I am, like the guys who ride at 20 miles per hour, they're talking to one another, but I'm having to focus on getting up the hill. And so I'm not looking at that house. And when and when I walk by, I run by, I'm more concerned with not being hit by a car or jumping into poison ivy.
My point, Marcy, is this is a piece of conservation land right next to this house, and I'm kind of concerned at the mass and the height of the house. I mean, I understand this doesn't bother you, but I'm trying to come from the town's perspective. Okay?
Well, what we can do to alleviate that is add some screening trees along this area here. What that'll do is cut the angle.
She's referring to the conservation land to the north.
Just referring to the whole piece.
Oh, I thought you didn't
People
want
walk
to
up
see the
there.
house.
I don't want to see the house,
They're
but
not talking about Glen Road, they're
I'm
talking
talking
about.
the walking
from
back
the-
there.
everything in back. I mean, it really will have a huge impact on this piece of land, and we usually really consider that when it's conservation land. And obviously, the previous owner who split this land up felt strongly about this. Otherwise, why would they have gone through this whole rigmarole for, breaking off a piece of the land? So
I can answer why they did it.
Yeah.
The new owner, it was the Kerms, I represented them. Their house sold first. They owned both houses. The one to the left, they owned. People who bought their house conditioned their offer on splitting up. It's private land subject to a conservation restriction. The purchaser of this property over here, they conditioned their offer on getting that property. So they wouldn't buy the property until we got the variance to allow this to be split off so we could convey this section to the one who bought the first house.
So these people were interested in
I
having
was going to say that's us.
buffers,
Oh,
right?
Yeah, I was going to say I snuck in after.
Yeah,
Is that an
Darcy
accurate-
Bartow.
Is that an accurate
You know,
description?
it is, and I
Yeah.
think the Kerms, the people we bought, we live at 455 Glen Road, they owned this piece of land, 441, and our house. And I think because of that concern, someday who knows what would happen. And so that's part of when we purchased 455, they offered to basically kind of sell that back end, which really helped, from our standpoint, protect it
Right.
and protect us and,
And protect
you know,
the town's conservation.
and the town's conservation land. And so, some of the changes that we've seen, we're actually really happy with the increase, what you showed with the green, like how that's increased, because if you can point, we're kind of up out of the picture there.
You're over here.
And then the one thing I don't know if you mentioned, I was a little late, is a lot of the drainage that flows down our driveway, that got moved, or that whole kind of collection area has moved. I'm not an engineer, but those are both really helpful from the conservation perspective.
And
So there is a big, I guess, buffer behind that we own that no one can do it. I mean, we can't even do anything
And
to.
to add to that, the request of what we've done along the tree line is provided some between 6 and 4 foot of understory. So we're not just clearing the lot, letting you look into the woods. There is some understory associated with the property line, and it does help screen the house as you're walking on whatever trails are back there.
And I would actually say, from our perspective, the absence of a pool helps a ton.
And later, when we get to, site plan and landscaping and all that, that will be brought up at that point and stuff. Are there other neighbors that want to comment?
Well, actually, just hold the thought for 1 minute, because I just wanted to find out, Steve, you haven't had a chance to make a comment.
I have nothing else to say at this point.
Right, and consultants, where's Dave? Hi, Dave. Are there any appreciable differences between the two options from a landscaping or an engineering perspective? Or, I mean, are they about the same?
The landscaping is pretty much the same for both, but if you recall from our last conversation, the concern was that evergreens on the west were arborvitaes because we were so tight.
Right, on the
And I think-
downslope into them.
Yeah, and I think in either option, we now have plenty of space to put in needle evergreens, which is what they're showing. But the landscape plan is pretty much the same. from-
Yeah. Same for engineering, about the same?
Yeah, it's, and, you know, we're not, with the house shrinking and the program shrinking and pool disappearing, which has been a little bit undersold, I think, tonight. You know, we're not shrinking the engineering, we're just kind of leaving that as is, so.
The pool house is gone too, that's a big note. I didn't mention that either.
Yeah. Right.
Phil Saunders and wife Lucy is here. We're the folks who live in this property here. I would, before getting to the pros and cons of A and B, I would hope this would not be the end of the story, this choice. What we would like to see is developing back the plan that didn't require digging up 3,000 to 5,000 cubic yards, maybe only moving 1,000, taking away 1,000, but the amount that's being picked up, piled up, and put back somewhere else, all of which produces noise, dust, extended construction time, and what have you, is still part of the plan. And that part, that is what we would really like to see the board pull their feet to the fire on, coming up with something that just doesn't produce the same level of disturbance. As to if the board would decide that you got A and B and you had to choose one and you like it and lump it, we'd actually take A simply because cars circulating around are going to be on the other side of the building, so I think there's conflict between these two neighbors and the Goldsmiths. I think it's
Not a conflict.
I don't think it's good. But even if you have this house, you're still 30 or 40 feet from the setback line. When I talked to the developer about this, he said, well, it's because of the drainage and the irrigation system or the retention plans, and we can't move it any further. I think they could figure out a different way to deal with these things that could actually get the house back up. Which I don't think, I'm not sure it would affect the Goldsmiths. It would be beneficial to the Bartels, because the further you get up in this direction, the more of this conservation land, which is forested, becomes part of the screen. Because their house is over here, and the angle which you're looking at. And of course, it's better for us to get further away. The other, just as a point of history, in your questions, the reason all this land is under conservation easement, regardless of who owns it now, is because of the Lombards. The Lombards own this whole property. They wanted to preserve it. People think I'm making a joke when I'm saying that Mrs. Lombard was out dawn stalking wild asparagus. I'm not, she was. She was a wonderful woman and loved this property. And that could considerable financial sacrifice. They put this under a permanent easement, which becomes a deed. So that's the basic history of it.
You also have a letter from the Saunders in your packets,
Okay.
and that was emailed to us.
Maybe we should read that into the record. Here it is. Yeah, it's fairly short.
It says pretty much what I just said.
Well,
We never received that letter.
well, I'm about to read it. This is dated August 28th from Lucy and Philip Saunders to the planning board, dear planning board members. At the July 16, 2014 meeting of the planning board, the board asked the developer to be more creative in coming up with a proposal which would minimize disturbance in vegetation, soil removal, blasting, and grade changes. The developer has submitted 2 sets of revised plans. One set eliminates the swimming pool, actually they both do, allowing the house to be moved another 16 feet from the southerly lot line, which our property abuts. The other eliminates the pool, okay, rotates the garage and moves the structure another 12 feet. The house could still be moved another 30 feet without crossing the northerly setback line. While the revised plans are improvements, the plans still call for a very large house, excavation of several thousand cubic yards of material, and significant leveling of the lot, as have all the developer's previous plans. We do not see these new proposals as responsive to the board's request and think the developer could do better. On another matter, since it is not clear to us whether all of the members of the board have received copies of previous letters written by neighbors, we are taking the liberty of attaching the letters here too. They are, and there's a list of 4 letters. One by Abu Aid and 7 other neighbors, dated June 2nd, 2014. Another from Bartell, dated June 9th, 2014. And then 2 from the Saunderses, dated June 17th and July 14th, 2014. We particularly call your attention to the Saunders letter of June 17th, which contains specific requests for orders of condition with respect to screening, lighting, hours of work, etc. Thank you for allowing us to comment. Very truly yours, Lucy and Philip Saunders. So that's the letter. Just a point of clarification. The size of the house is something that we are prescribed by actually state statute from limiting. So we can't stipulate that under site plan review. We can look at impacts, such as earth removal and amount of regrading. So that is a legitimate area for us to take a look at. We won't be doing that tonight, however. I think that the direction seems clear, since the neighbors both endorse option A, that's the direction to head in. We've had a couple of comments. Could it be moved still further back? Is there a way to reduce, to make it live more with the existing contours without removing quite so much material? Is there a scheme that would balance the cut and fill more closely? I think those are probably not bad goals to head for, if, as and when the time comes, that's the right thing to do. But right now, I think from the beginning of the meeting, the issue here is to resolve what the permit is that you guys are going for, and then we'll take it from there. So I think the contact from here is with Betsy, at least for the next several days. And what we'll do is we'll continue this hearing in anticipation of the resolution of that question. To what date?
October 1st at 9.
October 1st at 9 o'clock. And just to finish, let me just say, I appreciate all the concerns of the neighbors, but I really appreciate also that the developer here has made quite a few changes in response to our comments. And while we might not be there yet, I think that you know, I appreciate that such an effort has been made to respond to the concerns that we've expressed on the board. And so, with that, I will call the meeting continued to the 1st of October at 9 o'clock.
Thank you very much.
I want to just say one thing in reference to your letter, Mrs. Saunders. The orders of condition normally do include all information about screening, lighting, hours of work, and et cetera, et cetera. That's standard in any of our letters of condition. So you might want to take a look at some of the ones that have been issued before, because a lot of that's boilerplate kind of language. So, just to let you know that it would be in there anyway if we get to that.
Dig out 2 or 3 and send them.
Yeah, you can take a look at several of our conditions. You can see exactly what the format is.
The format or
The content.
the content?
Yeah.
The hours of work and stuff like that are all pro forma boilerplate. They're prescribed, so they don't.
They're not something you're going to change?
No. I mean, we had fairly rigorous standards on construction activities and that sort of thing, and particularly on blasting that exceed the state regulations, as a matter of fact.
And lighting, we always require dark sky initiative lighting, so that the light goes on the ground where it's supposed to be rather than up. And rather,
No floodlights.
Things like that.
Timers?
Yeah. Absolutely. And also management of construction vehicles. There's quite a few stipulations on how that's handled, so.
I'll be happy to look at it.
Yeah, all right. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome to have
Nice to meet you.
How are you doing? It is.
Favorite school, is that going to be a big deal?
I haven't made a decision. I just found out about 5 or 6 that the drainage is
Right.
Yeah, well, it is, because I would go that.
Yes, that's heading out of it.
They've made
Yes.
That's like over drawings and like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Charlie scheduled them
What side of the
Are
street?
they looking for a decision?
I have no idea.
Yeah, so they bracket it.
Oh, right.
So if you drove from one to the other, you drove down Washington Street.
I drove from one to the other. Yeah.
Which one do you go to? You drove down, when you went from one to the other, went down Washington Street to Main Street.
figured out the
lots of little
phase
parallel
of the
streets
lines.
on the left.
They're putting it out.
I think we can that's a lot.
Okay. I don't have the solid part.
They decreased the part. They were
Like my understanding of Winchester is I used to drive to like Burlington every day.
Maybe not those.
So, do you think we're going to be
Right, but yeah, but is because it needed to
Like we still have
They've resolved the septic system. I haven't seen the final. I think they've resolved the location.
but I
They still have, I don't think, they have not.
That is the sunsets from last week.
Does say they have approved.
Right, but then they were modified. So there was a memo that was sent out about 3 days
All right, we're ready to start the hearing on amendments to the RGFA decision for 253 Meadowbrook. And we've given this about 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. If we could go through the list of the changes, and do you think we could do it in 15 minutes?
Probably less than that.
All right, then that would give us maybe 10, 15 minutes for comments from our consultants and the board, and then open it up for public comments if there are any. Okay.
Okay. Greg Legault with MGA Architects. We just have a few mostly minor amendments to 253 Meadowbrook based on just taking the project from design development to construction documents and taking another look at things. Some of it is just purely cosmetic or aesthetic. Some of the changes are driven by site conditions that were discovered after approval. And I can just sort of walk you through on the front elevation. There were 2 dormers up on the roof, and in taking another look, we thought 3 looked better, gave it some more rhythm and a little more scale up there instead of seeing so much roof. And with the line of windows below, getting a little bit more definition up there helped the elevation. On the right side, behind the garage, once the blasting was done and all of the ledge removed, there was a little extra depth there, and so we saw an opportunity to drop the grade a bit and get the condensers sort of down, excuse me, in a bit of a hole to help with the sound attenuation because they are close to the setback line, and the neighbors were concerned about that. So we feel like that's going to greatly help in decreasing the sound. But from looking from outside the lot, looking back, the grade is still up here. There's just about a 8 or 9 foot swath that is lower, and then goes back up to existing grade. And you see that on the
before you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are those windows at the basement in the front?
Areaway?
Oh, that is an areaway. It was on the floor plans when it was approved originally, and we hadn't drawn it on the elevations mistakenly, so it would show up in the construction documents. But it's an areaway below grade.
The clouded areas on that plan are not the only areas that change. Pretty much everything is the fenestration, the proportions, everything has changed. Not necessarily significantly, but
right.
I just want to make sure that people realize that it's not just the 2 clouded areas.
Right. Yeah. We clouded what we felt were the major things that affected the massing and overall appearance of the building. There are definitely, window changes throughout the house, as you said, and trim changes that were really just sort of refinements going from design development to construction documents.
I have a question. The floor plans don't show the top floor, and where I have
The attic level.
The attic level. There are stairs that go up.
To storage space.
At one point, we had discussion about it, but I would like to see an attic on
We can give you that. Yeah, it's strictly storage space. There's no finished space up
Did you
there.
count that attic in the RGFA calculations?
No, it's completely unfinished storage space.
The dormers in the attic are purely cosmetic. They're there to break up the scale of the roof, not to create habitable living space. And also, if you look at the sectional geometry of that space, it really doesn't help make that space very useful, because the dormers are so deep in terms of the roof that all they do is they look good on the outside. They don't do anything in terms of living space.
On the areaway, I'm sorry to, but are you going to put a grate over it, or is there a fence around it, or how are you going to deal with somebody not falling into the hole?
We typically put a grate on it.
Okay.
And if it's an egress path, we put a ladder, and then the grate is in.
All right, so your intent is to put a grate over it?
Yes.
There's also plantings around it.
Yeah.
The south elevation facing Meadowbrook Road, again, when the ledge was removed, there was an opportunity we saw to have the grade remain lower here, about 10 feet off the house. It goes back to existing grade. Based on our site walk yesterday, we have actually added a wall. It doesn't show up in this because we're cutting in front of it, but in the landscape plans, you'll see we added a retaining wall, so grade is up 2.5 feet, I think, higher here. And your perspective from looking down at the road, you're so much lower. You're looking up at the house anyway, so you really can't really see the tops of those windows even once that wall is in and the plantings on top of the wall are in. On the west elevation facing into the lot, just to refresh people's memories, sorry. This is the elevation we're looking at now. This is Meadowbrook Road. Excuse me. The stair tower previously was lower than the stair towers on the front elevation that were the same design, same genre, and so lining that eave up here, where instead of dropping it down, lining it up and making it look the same, we felt was an important piece to tie the towers all together, make them all the same, and it helped us with some water management at the roof.